My name is Cormac. I'm 36 years old and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I was never the kind of man to brag about the good things I did for others. I have always believed that true generosity is silent. My family always knew this, and for a long time, I thought they knew how to appreciate it. But everything changed in a single weekend, when something that seemed like just another family celebration turned out to be a dirty, premeditated scam. A blow that almost destroyed everything I believed in. It all started at my younger cousin's wedding, Kayla. The ceremony was scheduled for a seaside resort in Savannah, Georgia, a beautiful place with stunning views, good wine, and people laughing with happiness. Me and my wife, Jenna, we arrived on Friday, excited about reuniting with our relatives. During Saturday, I took part in the photos, danced with the older uncles, and even raised a toast for the bride and groom. Everything was so peaceful, so normal. But sometimes, the worst hides right in the middle of normality. On Sunday morning, while we were packing our bags to go home, I decided to pay the hotel bill using the bank app. That's when I felt something strange. The value on the screen made no sense. My balance, which should have been over $11,000, now read just over $1,300. My first impulse was to think about an application error, an update failure perhaps. But as soon as the page reloaded, I realized it wasn't. The money was really gone. "Jenna, take a look at this here," I called, my voice catching in my throat. She came to me, her hair still disheveled from sleep, and looked at the screen. His countenance transformed. I opened the account history and there it was. 4 transfers made between 2 and 4 in the morning. The first of $3,200 to an account in my uncle's name, Rodney. The second $2,500 straight to Kayla. The third of $3,000 for someone named Mason Clark, a name that sounded familiar, but I couldn't bring myself to call anyone at the time. The last one was $1,000 for an unrecognizable bill. His hands started to sweat. My breathing became shallow. This couldn't be happening. None of this made sense. I checked the transaction type. Everything had been done through my bank's own application. In other words, someone accessed my account with the password. And not only that, he knew exactly what he was doing. I tried to remember where I was at that time, and then it hit me. I was sleeping soundly next to Jenna without any suspicious movements. "Cormac, someone at the wedding did this." Jenna spoke in a firm whisper but full of conviction. Someone close. Someone who knew the password. My heart sank. I tried to connect the dots. My cell phone was on the bedside table the entire time. Anyone could have caught it. And my password? Damn. It was the same as always. The same one I've been using since college. Something personal, but simple. Too familiar. I punched the hotel room wall lightly. The anger was beginning to grow, but it was still a silently boiling volcano. I called my cousin Evan, who was also staying on the same floor of the resort. He answered excitedly, not knowing what was coming. "Speak, Cormac. Leaving now." "Evan, I need to know if you know of any activity in my account. There were transfers made this morning. For Kayla, for Rodney, and others that I don't even recognize." On the other side, silence. Too long to be innocent. "Ah, so you saw it. Well, we were supposed to talk to you about this, but I don't know. The staff thought it was better to wait for you to return." "To talk? What do you mean talk?" "It was Uncle Rodney's idea. He said that you always help everyone, that you were doing well in life, so he wouldn't mind paying some money in advance." "To advance? They used my cell phone. How did they gain access?" "Kayla took your cell phone while you were sleeping. He said he knew his password. She just wanted to help sort out a few things before the honeymoon. We thought everything was fine. Family, right?" My fingers were gripping the cell phone tightly. I felt heat rise up my neck, but the voice was low. "You hacked my account, without my permission. That's stealing, Evan." On the other side, he laughed, as if I was exaggerating. "Wow, Cormac, you were always so calm. It's not like we're going to spend it on nonsense. It was to help the family. You earn well, live a happy life. People just thought it wouldn't be missed." I hung up without saying anything else. I couldn't keep listening to that. A theft disguised as a favor. That's what they were trying to sell. But it wasn't just the money. It was an abuse of trust, the invasion of my privacy. And the most perverse thing, the coldness with which they justified everything. I told Jenna that before we headed back to Asheville, We would take a detour to my parents' house, where most of the family would still be together. I needed to look into their eyes. I needed to see who would have the courage to lie to me by looking me in the face. During the car ride, Jenna was silent. Every now and then he looked at me, worried, but he knew it was better to leave me in my own silence. With each kilometer covered, more scenes from the past invaded my mind. Expensive gifts I gave to my nephews, the times I paid Rodney's late rent, the shopping I made for Kayla before graduation. All of this now sounded like a wasted investment to me. Not because he expected a return, but because he believed there was respect in return. We arrived just before lunch. The house was busy, people laughing on the balcony, dishes being placed on the table. But when I entered, the atmosphere cooled. Kayla was the first to see me. "Cormac, I can't believe you're back. Save your enthusiasm," I replied dryly. "We need to talk, now." Rodney appeared from the kitchen, a glass of soda in his hand. My mother, confused, approached, but I raised my hand, asking for silence. "Someone here will explain to me why almost $11,000 were withdrawn from my account last morning, and why did they do it without even thinking to tell me?" The room was silent. Rodney was the first to try the old excuse. "Look, Cormac, it was just an emergency. We were trying to resolve some issues with Kayla, pay some bills. You always help. We don't think you'd mind." My jaw clenched. Hacking into someone's account while they sleep is not helpful. It's a crime. And the worst, it's betrayal. "Do you think my goodwill is a blank check?" Nobody responded. But the accusing looks, the shrugged shoulders, and the silent shame gave me the confirmation I was missing. They knew exactly what they were doing. And at that moment, without me saying it out loud, the decision came to me. This would not go unpunished. I left that room with my head boiling and my heart racing. Jenna followed me onto the porch but didn't say anything. I think she knew there were no words that could alleviate what I was feeling at that moment. I grew up with those people. I shared a Christmas table, funerals, birthday parties, picnics in the park. They knew my life, my fears, my achievements, and yet they were able to use it against me, as if I were nothing more than a walking wallet with the same surname. I spent a few minutes breathing deeply in the front yard of my parents' house. The grass was freshly cut, and the muffled sound of conversations inside the house barely reached me. I took out my cell phone, logged back into the bank app, and started taking screenshots of all the transactions made. I saved everything in a folder, then contacted the bank's customer service, who immediately blocked the account from future transactions. I opened a dispute protocol, and the very kind attendant advised me to file a police report. And then it hit me hard. I would need to denounce my own family. And as much as everything in me screamed that this was right, there was a crushing weight to this idea. I went back to the car. Jenna was already sitting in the passenger seat, silent. I got in, buckled up, and stood there with my hands on the steering wheel. She held my hand gently and said, "If you don't do anything now, they will do it again, and next time it could be worse." I nodded briefly. I knew she was right. But the problem wasn't just money. It was the symbol behind the attitude. It was how naturally everyone acted, as if they had the right to do that to me, as if my life and my resources were an extension of their lives, as if the fantasy of me never saying no before was proof that they could say yes to me. On the way back to Asheville, we stopped at a local police station in a nearby town. I filed a police report. I calmly explained that the transfers had been made without my permission, using my cell phone and password while I was sleeping. The police officer who attended to me, a serious guy named Official Hughes, asked me a series of questions and wrote everything down very precisely. In the end, he gave me a copy of the bulletin and recommended that I keep everything: prints, communications, bank statements. "This could become a case of device hacking and qualified theft," he said in a deep voice, "especially if it involves people close to you and abuse of trust. It's more common than you might think." Back on the road, with the documents in the glove compartment and my head still buzzing, I began to mentally revisit all the episodes from the last few years. I remembered the time I paid for my dental surgery. Margot, my aunt on my mother's side, because she said she was in unbearable pain and had no health insurance. The time I bought my teenage cousin a new bike, Nate, because his school was far away and the bus was dangerous. I remembered the times Rodney cried on the phone saying he wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage on his house and that his children would be homeless. Back then, I helped everyone. Not because I had to, but because I thought it was right. But now I saw it with different eyes. It wasn't generosity they saw in me. It was weakness. It was an infinite source that never said no. And worse, it was a tool. I was useful, that's all. Love and respect were conditional. If I stopped giving, they would stop caring. The next day, I woke up early and decided to talk to someone outside who had more experience with this type of situation. I called a longtime friend, Miles, who now worked as a digital security analyst at a private company. He was always a meticulous guy, obsessed with tracking things. I explained what had happened, and he agreed to meet me at a cafe close to the city center. I arrived early and ordered 2 black coffees. When Miles arrived, he barely sat down and already took his laptop out of his backpack. "Let's understand how this was done exactly," he said, turning on the device. I handed over my cell phone and explained that they had probably used the device with my password during the night. He analyzed the device logs, banking app access history, and found something interesting. "Look at this here. The location of the last login session matches the resort address, but there was a previous access attempt with a password error, which came from a different device. 2 days earlier, someone was testing your password before the big scam." I widened my eyes. "In other words, were they planning this from the beginning?" "Exactly. This was engineered. It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't necessary. It was a strategic decision. Someone probably tested a password and confirmed that you were still using the same one as always." Miles helped me put together a detailed dossier. Prints of transactions, access reports, copies of the police report, conversations with those involved, and even old messages from family members asking for money, all with the same emotional pattern. Praise and pleading at the beginning, followed by demands and at the end, accusations. A cycle of manipulation that was now wide open. Back home, I organized the documents into a folder, and with Jenna's support, contacted a lawyer who specialized in family litigation and financial crimes. Her name was Clara Bowman, and his reputation was impeccable in the region. On our first meeting, she listened silently. Then he took a deep breath and said, "Cormac, what you describe is a classic case of family financial abuse. This is more common than it seems. Many victims take years to recognize that they have been emotionally and financially exploited. You are right to seek justice." Clara was clear, no pun intended. If I wanted to take this further, she would take care of everything. But he also warned that there would be social consequences. The family would probably turn their back on me. They would paint me as the villain. They would use children as an emotional shield. They would try to make me doubt my decision. But she was also firm. "You've already lost money. Don't lose your peace of mind together. They exceeded all limits. Now it's time for you to raise yours." That night, lying with Jenna on the couch, I felt something different for the first time. It wasn't anger, nor sadness. It was liberation. A strange kind of relief at finally seeing the truth that was always there. I wasn't part of a family. I was a resource. And now, for the first time, he was willing to cut that chain. The next morning, I sent a message in the family group on my cell phone. I wrote calmly, without offense. He said that he knew what they had done, that he had already taken legal action, that the investigation was ongoing, and that from that moment on, he would no longer accept any contact, except through legal means. The group fell silent for a full 2 hours, but after that, the messages started pouring in. First Kayla, saying that she was desperate, that it was all the fault of Trevor, her husband, and that she just wanted to help. Then Rodney, calling me ungrateful, saying that I was always his favorite nephew, and that I was destroying the family because of something stupid. And finally, my mother. Oh, that one hurt. She wrote, "Cormac, if your grandfather were alive, he would be ashamed. What you are doing will tarnish our family name forever." I read that in silence. Then I deleted the message. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt strong. After that bombardment of messages, I blocked all contacts. My phone seemed to have turned into an emotional grenade. Each notification made me relive the hurt, the mistake, the humiliation. I only left 2 numbers active, my lawyer Clara's and my friend Miles. I knew that, from now on, everything would change. It wasn't just about getting the money back. It was about positioning myself. About saying enough is enough. About showing that no one else would step on me with the weight of the excuse called family. In the following days, Clara filed a formal request to open an investigation at the region's Financial Crimes Police Station. We attach all the documents, the bank records, the technical report made by Miles, the prints of the conversations, and even a complete history of the donations and loans I made in the last 5 years. When she saw the finished spreadsheet, she was silent for a few seconds. "Cormac, that's over $24,000. Last year alone there were more than 9,000. Do you notice the pattern?" I nodded. I had already noticed it a few days ago. What seemed to me, before, just sporadic generosity, became there in front of the numbers, a routine of disguised abuse. And the worst, I was being conditioned. It started with a subtle request, followed by emotional appeals. Then came the blackmail. "Don't you mind? We are family. You have so much, is it difficult to help?" The investigation was officially opened 3 days later. I received confirmation by email. The officer responsible for the case was a woman named Lieutenant Naomi Rutherford, specializing in family fraud. She called me on the same day the process was opened. "Mr. Cormac, I want you to know that we are taking your case completely seriously. This type of crime may seem domestic, but the emotional and financial gravity is real. We will conduct interviews, gather evidence, and if necessary, we will take it to the public prosecutor's office." It was comforting, and for the first time, I started to breathe better. But, as Clara had predicted, the attacks began to escalate. At the end of that same week, Rodney appeared in front of my building. His face was red, sweaty, and the expression of a man in controlled despair. Jenna saw it on the reception camera and called me. "He's out there. He wants to talk to you." I won't open the door. If he wants to talk, let him talk to Clara. But he didn't give up. He shouted my name, said he was willing to return the money, but that the police needed to take it easy, that Kayla was crying every day, and that he himself was about to lose his job because of the investigation. I heard everything from the apartment window, hidden behind the curtain. "Cormac, we are of the same blood, for God's sake. Are you really going to destroy your own family for this?" And that's when it dawned on me. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were afraid of the consequences. The difference was subtle, but fundamental. Nobody apologized. No one recognized the seriousness of the invasion. They just wanted to put out the fire before it got to their clothes. And now that the fire was burning the foundations they thought indestructible, it was my fault. The traitor, the ungrateful one, which went too far. Jenna called building security. Rodney was removed to protests and grumbles. Minutes later, I received an email from Clara with an official subpoena request for Kayla, Rodney, and Mason Clark. The investigation was progressing, and the most impactful thing was seeing my own mother's name in the possible co-author field. "My mom?" I asked Clara over the phone. "Yes, Cormac. From the messages you showed us and the conversation records, there is strong evidence that she had prior knowledge of the actions. Her emotional influence on you can constitute indirect coercion and collusion." I swallowed hard. It hurt, but I didn't dispute it. The truth hurts, and only those who have been betrayed by someone they love know how the pain of the realization can be greater than that of the suit itself. The following week, I received an unexpected call. It was Gavin, Kayla's younger brother. He was always more reserved, the type to avoid confusion, but her voice was shaky on the phone. "Cormac, man, I wanted to talk to you, but I don't know if I should." "He can talk. If you want to tell the truth, you always can. They planned everything. I heard Rodney talking to Kayla before the wedding. They knew you left your cell phone unlocked when you slept. The password. Kayla had already tested it on a family trip. Remember when you left your phone in the car? She decorated it." My stomach turned. I remembered. I tried to talk, but Rodney said that was adult business, that if I got involved, I would regret it. But I can't keep quiet anymore. What they did was wrong. And, if you need me to say this to someone, I will. I was silent for a moment. Gavin was young, but he had courage, something that the elders of the family seemed to have lost. "Thanks, Gavin. You just gave more strength to the truth." I immediately passed the contact details on to Clara, who arranged a formal statement with him. "Your collaboration would be essential. He could confirm that everything was planned before the wedding, that there was premeditation, that they knew the password, that there was no impulse, there was intention. That changed everything, and it strengthened the case even further. That night, I received an anonymous letter at the building's lobby, folded paper with my name written in hand. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a simple sheet of paper with a familiar handwriting. It was Kayla's. The content? A mix of apology and emotional blackmail. Cormac, I was wrong. But so were you. You could have resolved this with a talk. Now we're all being investigated. My life has become chaos. Trevor wants to separate. My father almost had a breakdown yesterday. Please think of the children, of your uncles, of our Sundays together. Think about whether it's worth destroying all of this for money you didn't even need. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes. So I tore the letter into small pieces and threw it in the trash. Because what was being destroyed wasn't something I destroyed. It was something that never really existed. That was just the beginning of the revenge I never planned. A revenge carried out with laws, with justice, and most cruel of all, with the truth. Because there is no greater punishment for those who live through manipulation than being exposed in front of everyone, with evidence, with clarity, with real consequences. And I was just getting started. The days following Kayla's letter were filled with silent tension. No phone calls, no unexpected visits. It was as if they were gathered together, plotting something new or trying to clean up the trail of dirt left behind. But now I had something I never had before in this relationship: control. For the first time, the narrative was not theirs. They could no longer distort the facts, paint me as selfish or ungrateful. There were documents, witnesses, an ongoing investigation, and each new piece fit perfectly into the puzzle of truth. Jenna was my pillar. Even without talking much about what we were facing, his presence by my side gave me the strength I didn't know I needed. Sometimes we would sit at the kitchen table and she would just hold my hand, looking in silence, like someone who understands a pain that words cannot reach. She herself, years ago, had cut ties with part of her family for similar reasons. Emotional blackmail, demands disguised as love. Maybe that's why she never doubted the path I chose to follow. Lawyer Clara remained relentless and dedicated. One day, at the end of a meeting, she told me something that stuck with me. Cormac, cases like yours are often difficult to pursue because the system often treats family as a space immune to accountability. But precisely for this reason, when we manage to break this barrier, the impact is strong. Others gain courage. Justice is no longer a distant idea. That week, I received formal notification. Kayla and Rodney had been officially indicted for unauthorized access to electronic device and qualified theft in the context of a trust relationship. Mason Clark, the recipient of one of the transfers, was also included as an accomplice, as the investigation showed that the money passed to him was used to pay off gambling debts in Las Vegas, a discovery that stunned me. I never imagined Mason would be so bogged down. As for my mother, the prosecutor decided not to pursue a formal accusation due to lack of sufficient material evidence, but Clara advised me to file a lawsuit civil for moral damages and indirect participation. It was a difficult decision, and even more painful, but I wasn't going to back down anymore. She knew, she encouraged, she agreed, and now she too would face the consequences. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. The court would allow all defendants to be present, along with their lawyers. Clara prepared everything perfectly, and in the midst of that whirlwind, an unexpected name emerged: Gavin. He decided on his own to write a signed statement detailing everything he knew. He asked to read it out loud in court. He said he could no longer live with the omission, that to shut up now would be to perpetuate the same rotten structure that has destroyed him from within for years. Cormac, if I keep pretending, I'll end up just like them. I want to be different. I want to be honest, even if it turns me inside out inside. The day before the hearing, I received a call from my father. He had barely spoken to me since the beginning of it all. Our relationship has always been cold, but respectful. But now his voice on the other end had a tone I didn't recognize. A contained bitterness, an anger disguised as sadness. Cormac, listen, we made a mistake. Maybe not in everything, but we exaggerated, and now everything is falling apart. Your mother is in shock. Your cousins are being exposed. And you became the family executioner. Is this what you wanted? I was silent for a moment. Then I replied, no. What I wanted was respect. Just that. But no one cared to give it. So now you're going to learn the hard way. He was quiet. He took a deep breath. And before hanging up, he murmured, if you step foot in that courtroom tomorrow, in my opinion, you will die right there. The connection dropped. I stared at nothing for several minutes. Jenna came into the room and just hugged me. I was falling apart on the inside, but strong on the outside. Like steel that only bends in extreme heat, but doesn't break. On the morning of the hearing, I wore my best blazer and straightened my tie as if preparing for war. The local court was full. Relatives of the accused, local journalists. It seemed as if the entire city had been piqued by curiosity. Outside, reporters waited to cover the case of the family betrayed from within. I avoided cameras. This wasn't about fame. It was about justice. Inside, I saw Rodney with his head down, Kayla with red eyes, holding tissues, Mason trying to look oblivious, but visibly uncomfortable. And then, Gavin entered. He sat in the row reserved for witnesses. When the judge asked him to speak, silence took over the room. I'm Gavin, Kayla's brother, and I saw everything. They planned ahead. They knew Cormac's password. They said he was too stupid to understand. They used his money as if it were family law. And when I tried to intervene, they said I'd better shut up. His words cut the air like a blade. Some people in the audience started crying. Others lowered their heads, embarrassed. And me? For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. At the end of the hearing, the judge determined that the case would proceed to formal trial. The prosecution had already presented enough evidence to constitute a crime. More than that, the judge issued a temporary restraining order, preventing any of the defendants from coming near me, Jenna, or my home. On the way out, I bumped into Kayla in the hallway. She tried to look me in the eye, but I looked away. There was no more room for reconciliation. There was no more family Sunday. The bridge had collapsed, and the rubble was there for everyone to see. But what surprised me most was the phone call I received that night. Ira Tobias, a distant cousin on his paternal side, with whom he barely spoke. He said he followed everything through the local media and wanted to say thank you. Cormac, you have no idea how much your act is opening doors. There are many people in the family who have suffered similar abuse, but have always remained silent. You gave us a voice. Thank you, really. I hung up with my heart racing. Maybe my revenge, even without blood, would be greater than I imagined. Perhaps she was inspiring others to break invisible chains. And the most ironic thing, all of this was born from the betrayal of those who were supposed to protect me. What happened in the days following the preliminary hearing was a whirlwind. The confirmation of the formal judgment shook each of them, and it was evident, not because of the awareness of the crime, but because of the fear of punishment. They didn't expect me to go all the way. They believed that all it would take was one cry, one word family thrown in the middle of a sentence, and I would give in like I always did. But not this time. I was tired of being the foundation of the house they built on top of me. Clara, my lawyer, didn't stop. She strengthened the civil case against my mother for indirect participation, attaching the new evidence and Gavin's testimony. Until then, my mother remained completely silent. No connection, no attempts to contact. But deep down, I knew. She wasn't silent out of shame. It was pride. The kind of pride that stifles any chance of reconciliation. And honestly, it didn't hurt anymore. It hurt before. It hurt when I still expected something from her. Now, it only hurt as much as necessary to keep the flame of justice burning. The local repercussion was inevitable. A small Asheville news site published a discreet story. Family financial abuse case leads Asheville resident to sue relatives. Nothing sensationalistic, but enough to spark online discussions. The most surprising thing was seeing the comments, people sharing their stories. Stories of siblings who took hidden inheritances, of parents who used their children's names to open credit cards, of aunts who asked for help out of necessity and bought jewelry with the money. And then the day of judgment arrived. The forum was busier than at the previous hearing. I didn't expect such interest, but apparently my story was awakening something bigger in people. Identification. People saw themselves in me. In silence, I sat in the front row, with Jenna next to me. Clara was sorting out the paperwork. Gavin was already present, and little by little they arrived. Rodney with a sullen expression. Kayla looked like she had aged 10 years in a month. Mason with the air of someone who still thought he was going to escape unharmed. The judge entered and the process began. Clara presented the evidence again, reinforcing the pattern of emotional manipulation, the premeditation of access to the cell phone, the use of money for unauthorized purposes. Gavin was called again, and this time his voice was firmer, safer. He knew the weight he was carrying, but he also knew he was clearing his conscience. On the other side, the lawyers tried the predictable strategy, claiming that it was a misunderstanding, an informal loan between family members, that everything would be returned. But the narrative fell apart as soon as the judge read aloud the list of purchases made with the money. Mason's bet, Kayla's gold bracelet, the 82-inch television purchased by Rodney with the recently paid-off card. It was too obvious to be a coincidence. There was no way to defend. Then something happened that I didn't expect. In the middle of the session, my mother stood up from the back of the room and asked to be heard. The prosecutor hesitated, but the judge allowed it. She walked to the front of the room with slow steps. It seemed smaller than I remembered, the haggard face, without makeup. He looked at me for a brief second, then turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I was not directly involved, but he knew. I knew what they were going to do. I stayed silent because I thought he could handle it. Cormac was always strong. He always had more. I thought it wouldn't make a difference. And now, I've lost my son." The room fell silent, but I didn't cry. I wasn't even moved, because those words, although real, came too late. They only served to reinforce what I always knew. If I hadn't reacted, everyone would be smiling today, calling me a hero, while chewing on my dignity. The trial ended that day with the decision that Kayla, Rodney, and Mason would be held criminally responsible for aggravated theft and improper access to an electronic device, with a sentence of 2 years probation, full restitution of the stolen amount, plus additional fines for moral damages. In the civil case, my mother was ordered to pay symbolic compensation and stay away from me for an indefinite period of time, under penalty of judicial sanction. As we left the court, journalists tried to approach all of us. I didn't say anything, but Clara made a point of making a brief statement. Today, it wasn't just about money. It was about limits. It was about showing that family ties cannot be used as a shield for abuse. Mr. Cormac had the courage to do what many cannot, say no, even when it hurts. We returned home in silence. Jenna drove. I watched the road. The sky was starting to change color, that golden transition before dusk. And suddenly, I realized that I didn't feel angry. Not sadness, no relief. It was something else. It was peace. A cold, almost disconcerting, but genuine peace. The cycle was finished. That night, we organized dinner at home. Just me, Jenna, and Gavin. We made homemade tacos, drank cheap wine, laughed. He talked about plans to move to Seattle, maybe try out for a job at a digital marketing company. I want to start over, far from it all, far from hypocrisy. "You will make it," to answer. "You've already done the hardest thing. You chose the right side." Gavin smiled. For the first time in years, he actually smiled. And in that moment, I realized I didn't lose everything. I still had something new, something built on the truth. Time has a curious way of dealing with wounds. It doesn't erase, but heals with texture. It leaves marks, yes, but also resistance. A month has passed since the end of the trial. The repercussions were many. Kayla and Rodney sold assets to pay part of the restitution. Mason disappeared from the map after complying with the court's first demand. And my mother, well, she even disappeared from the internet. Her silence was now different, that of someone who had finally lost the control she thought was eternal. During this time, I received messages from people I never imagined would care. Acquaintances from childhood, former college classmates, even neighbors I never really talked to. Some congratulated me on my courage. Others shared their own stories of family abuse. It was impressive the number of people who, like me, had spent years of their lives carrying the weight of guilt that was not theirs. And at that moment, I understood something profound. My revenge was not mine alone. It resonated with many people. She freed more than myself. One afternoon, I received a letter. It was from Marty Reynolds, distant cousin on my father's side. We've only seen each other a few times in our lives. The letter was simple, handwritten. Cormac, I found out about your case from my mother. I want you to know that, even though I was distant, I felt represented. My own family exploited me for years, and they always told me that I was selfish for not accepting it. When I saw what you did, I cried. For the first time, I understood that I'm not the one in the wrong. You gave me courage. Thank you. I closed the letter with teary eyes. I took a deep breath. I kept it in a box where I have important things, because that was more than just paper. It was confirmation that everything, every tear, every pain, every confrontation was worth it. 2 weeks later, Jenna called me into the room. She had her laptop on her lap, smiling with that glow that only she has when preparing surprises. I need to get you out of here for a weekend. I already packed everything. You don't have to do anything. Just trust. And so it was that, one Friday at dusk, we hit the road towards a rented cabin near Lake Crescent in the state of Washington. The place was simply magical, a rustic but cozy building, surrounded by tall trees and a silent lake that seemed to mirror the sky. On Saturday night, we sat on the deck in front of the lake. The moon reflected off the water, and candles flickered around us. Jenna approached, holding a small wooden box. My heart accelerated. Cormac, she said in a soft voice, you went through hell and didn't bend. You reinvented yourself, protected others. You inspire me, every day. She opened the box. Inside, there was not a ring, but a small key. This is the key to the new house. I bought a new place for us to start over, away from everything. And if you want, I want us to build a new family there, ours, the one we choose. The tears came before the words. I hugged Jenna like someone finding shelter after a storm of years. Because that was it. For the first time, I was free. Free to love without fear. Free to live without guilt. Over the next few months, we moved into the new house. A simple building, surrounded by trees and far from the past. Gavin moved to Seattle as promised, got a job at a creative agency, and writes to me almost every week. Clara was promoted and sent me a message saying that my case had become a reference in ethics and civil law workshops. And from time to time, I still receive emails like Marty's. People who saw in my story a mirror, a path, a warning. Today, I don't carry hate. Hatred consumes. What I carry is something more powerful, discernment. I know who I am. I know what I no longer accept. I know that love without respect is prison, and that being family will never be an excuse to exploit, deceive, or hurt. And that's why, if you've heard my story so far, I ask you, subscribe to the channel. Yes, sign up. Not only to support this journey, but to be part of a community where the truth matters, where stories like mine and yours have space. Because I know you carry some story inside too, something you may never have had the courage to tell. So share with us in the comments. Have you ever experienced something similar? What did you learn from this? Have you also felt the weight of carrying a family that doesn't respect you? Here, no one will call you selfish for protecting their peace. Here, your voice matters. And remember, sometimes true revenge isn't to destroy. It's rebuilding, with courage, with dignity, with freedom.